About things not tasting good.
Okay, yeah. But the other thing that I thought would be cool about is obviously between a lot of us, we played a lot of different MMOs, and I feel like especially since Stormblood's release, we've done a lot of comparisons between FF14 and other MMOs. So I thought that this might maybe point us in a few different directions, or bring up some topics that we maybe wouldn't have thought of before. Because obviously, we've compared it to World of Warcraft, and maybe even because of Ascalia, a Star Wars game or something, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So here
Now
we go.
wait,
We're gonna
hold
start.
up. This is of all time, so this isn't like this is considering like what the things were like when they released, and it's all in the moment.
It says the 10 greatest MMORPGs of all time.
Okay, I just don't want to hear like great MMOs of old be like not in there because like the graphics aren't very good by today's standards.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well,
now they do say in the article these are merely our own thoughts put to paper. They didn't use any type of catalog or polls or anything like that, right?
Okay.
So number 10, Final Fantasy 14.
Oh.
Okay.
Were you expecting we'd be a little higher?
I thought it might be like 6. At least 6.
You know what, though?
Damn it.
I'm so happy that it's number 10 because now we get 9 games that we get to laugh that are better.
Bottom of the bucket. And the reason I think we can probably all agree with, and it says, if for no other reason, FF14 deserves a spot on this list for being the only MMORPG that was ever dead on arrival, only to be shut down and resurrected into something truly sublime. I think we can all
that
agree.
is 100% true.
That's fair.
That is 100% true. And if for no other reason, FF14 deserves its place in an MMO history for that.
Absolutely,
and I mean,
you're right. Like a development project like an MMO should, in theory, tank a company.
Oh God, yeah,
the whole fucking company.
Which 2 failed MMOs did not tank their company? FF14 and SWTOR. That's it.
Wait, was SWTOR a failed MMO?
It tanked so hard on launch.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of SWTOR still even is like, yeah, if you want it for the story, play for the story and then quit.
That's
like,
exactly what it is.
It's still going though, right?
It's free to play.
It is. It has a free. Well, no, it has a free to play model,
different.
but there's still a pay to play model along with
That's
it.
different then. I think the question is, when an MMO fails, like it's done, they're gonna shut it down. Is that company still going?
Yeah, I mean, I would still call it a massive failure.
Well, wait, but what
That's
company
fair.
was technically behind SWTOR?
Well, that's what I mean. It was it's an EA thing, so like they can float it. Like it's Square Enix and EA that they can float.
Was that part of the was it Lucas Games or whatever the original Star Wars? Because that whatever the Star Wars game company has been dismantled by Disney, so that's no longer a thing.
Maybe they didn't survive. The Old Republic was. It was BioWare. Oh no.
Oh no, that's
still
right.
going.
Well, no, the Old Republic was BioWare, not Star
Not Knights
Yeah.
of the Old Republic. We're talking the Old Republic.
Oh,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No,
I
it's
thought KOTOR knew was BioWare.
KOTOR was BioWare. Yeah. So it's EA and BioWare. So by the way, some of the honorable mentions on here, I want to say just because I don't like that, like Final Fantasy X just barely missed, or Final Fantasy 14 just barely missed being one of these honorable mentions. We've got Asheron's Call, Lord of the Rings Online, The Secret World, Rift, Black Desert, Meridian 59, Lineage 1 and 2, EverQuest 2, PlanetSide, MapleStory, RuneScape, and SWTOR.
So 14 beat all of those ones.
Yeah, so
14
none of
beat
those
all
are going to be
those.
on the rest of this list, guys.
Okay, well I'm glad we're better than Lineage 1.
So
But RuneScape, I played that in high school.
This actually goes on to say that FF14 is loved by millions of Final Fantasy fans across the globe. FF14 is a testament to what a studio can do with care for its fans, reverence for its IP, a focus on core ideals, and polish. Do you guys think this person actually plays the game?
I think that that's what it was for its relaunch and
Yes.
maybe even Heavensward. But now, because they've discovered their safe spot, they're too afraid to take risks, even when it's when their players want it. And we've talked about that a million times. And I think that that's where now, like if you look at FF14 as a launch, as an MMO, it's a fantastic MMO. It should be on this list. But when you look at where it is in Stormblood in terms of development and what their future plans are, we as players can see that it's not that great. Anyone on the outside looking in is not going to see this.
That's actually fair, Nika. You're right. Like that description of the game is absolutely 2.0 launch. It is not what we have now.
I totally agree with that. That I think when A Realm Reborn launched, they really struck the right balance between catering to the long-term fans of the Final Fantasy franchise and making a good MMO. They did both. They did both of those things.
And even still at this point, anyone I see who is like thinking about picking up 14 only hears good things. They're like, yeah, I hear it's a fun MMO. A lot of people play it. Like, I heard that it sucked and now it's good. Like, people on the outside only see that view of 14. It's just us who are so invested. Like, our whole self is invested, and we see the developers, because we've been there from the beginning, and we see how the developers started on a high and they're slowly drooping. It's us that's sitting here with that very critical view. Anyone making a list like this is not going to see that.
Yeah,
and the game hasn't changed at all in the 6 years that we've been playing it.
Right, exactly.
That too. Stagnation is a big thing. Stagnation is a big knock against any MMO,
and it's a goal that almost every MMO faces at some point.
Yes,
I mean,
regardless of whether or not you are repeating content like 14 is doing, right? Like.
Right.
Every MMO, no matter what, is either, I mean, it's got a certain window of time where it's going to be, the most playable. And, if you disappoint on content too, like, dude, there's very few people are going to want to stick it out with you.
Well, and I mean, like, stagnation is such a problem for MMOs, and that's why, like, when Cataclysm happened in World of Warcraft, I wasn't big on World of Warcraft at the time, but I respected that move where they at least looked at it and said, this world is stale as fuck.
Well, and that was one of the first times that I think a big MMO like sort of doubled down and was like, we're going to change everything. And if you didn't experience what was there before, too bad. You're never going to see it.
It's gone. Exactly. And I really respected that at the time, because they took a game that was already going on 10 years old and said, okay, you know what? Maybe it's time to do something new with it. And 14... you're going to be getting to that point sooner than you're happy about, because you're not going to last 10 years to get to that point. You're there now. You were there 6 months ago. So it's time to do something original.
Mm-hmm. All right. So did any of you guys play number 9 here? Does anybody who actually played it want to read number 9?
I'll do it. Number 9 is City of Heroes. Let's see. And he says he doesn't want to make the next 2 games in memoriam, but it might be unavoidable. Like everyone knows, City of Heroes has been shut down, unfortunately, and it's really been the best one. He says it's a hidden section of gamer that wasn't just into D&D. It's so missed to this day that there are a handful of independent fan projects looking to carry its mantle. Until then, the fans of City of Heroes can only play their favorite NPCs in NCSoft's MXM.
Now, I never actually played City of Heroes, but the idea or the concept of it was, obviously being like a huge Marvel and comic book fan, was always a cool idea to me. Did any of you guys actually play it? I feel like Joe would have.
You know what? I did not play City of Heroes. I did DC Universe, which was a horrible choice, because I had the option of either one of them, and I picked wrong.
Yeah, you did. I played City of Heroes, and I thought it was really, really fun. I didn't get to a very high level because it was just so much fun playing different heroes and different classes and stuff, and just making the new heroes.
I was gonna say, is that what they did? Did they actually have classes in that game?
Yeah, like you had different like classes. Like you had Blaster, which is like a
okay, yeah, all right, I guess,
which was like a melee and stuff.
Yeah.
How do you do gear in that game if you get to pick what you look like though?
Basically, like gear was kind of like I guess like glyphs, where you just like kind of attach into like your this aether
like
thing,
materia or runes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like it didn't affect you personally, but like you could like enhance like your special, like how much damage you did, or how fast a spell or an ability casted, or what have you.
All right, well, question for you then: City of Heroes better than FF14?
Probably.
Hold on.
It's been a long time since I've actually been able to play City of Heroes, and I didn't get to a very high level.
I was gonna say, is there? I feel like there could be like a little bit of conflict here, because where you're at with Final Fantasy 14 is obviously going to affect the way that you're looking at a game that you didn't even necessarily,
Actually, yeah, you know what? No, I'm going to say 14 is a better game than City of Heroes was, because the story and how invested I was in 14 outweighs City of Heroes. And I didn't really get attached too much to City of Heroes. I never got to like even like remotely a high level in it. But City of Heroes is a lot better than it's got shut down for.
Okay, so one more question. What was your hero's name?
My highest level guy. I'll tell you my second character first. My second character's name was Love Cheetah, and he had bright blue hair, and he wore like a leotard that was completely like leopard print, and she looked like she was naked, and she was a healer.
All right, blue hair.
Yeah, blue hair.
I don't
And
know.
with a ponytail.
Yeah, okay, I don't know, but just for some reason, describing that character, I'm picturing a Scalia in my head.
No, but a leopard
Love
print, so it's
Cheetah.
different.
No, Love Cheetah is a Scalia.
Okay, fair enough.
I am
But my main character was he had a cigar and like a little beret, a red beret, and he was also completely naked. And he had blue skin, but like red pulsy veins, and I named him like Lieutenant Cold or Lieutenant Frost or something. He was ice powers.
You made Snart.
I did, but he was like military because he had like a beret and like a cigar and stuff.
Oh, you are so bad.
I was high school, man. Okay, I could barely read at that point.
All right, Scalia, you should probably do this next one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So number 8, Star Wars Galaxies. Absolutely. They say Star Wars Galaxies was a mess at launch, but goddamn, what a beautiful mess it was. It was a Star Wars fan's dream game, a living, breathing universe to start life in start life as whatever kind of scoundrel, farm boy, dancer, or pilot you wanted to be. And yeah, they describe it really accurately. Player-made villages, horizons as far as the eye could see, and it really was genius for how stupidly hard it was. It was like the FF11 of Star Wars MMOs.
So was this more akin to like how Eve or Ashes of Creation want stuff to be like player driven? Was that sort of the idea behind it?
It was very player driven. I mean, don't get me wrong, they offered a lot of stuff. It wasn't completely player driven, but there were whole villages did pop up that were run by people, and you could they could side with the Empire, they could be resistance, they were full of scoundrels, like whoever was in charge of that village, whatever they wanted it to be, that's what it was. It was glitchy as all hell, but like, dude, there's so much like fun random stuff you could do. And as Ryoku's adequately pointing out, then they added Jedi and everything went to hell because
oh my god, I never played this game before, but even I like heard the ripples that adding Jedi had to the game. Wasn't it something like you couldn't even select it? Like you had to like
earn it.
Yeah, you had to earn it, and like it was like kind of random.
It's kind of cool though.
You had to go through an inanely long quest line with some unbelievably uncommon drops to become force sensitive, and then begin getting trained, and then finally crafting your lightsaber. And it was extraordinarily difficult, and because it was extraordinarily difficult, it was extraordinarily powerful. So anyone who did have one was broken.
I was gonna say, it sounds kind of like what relic weapons in FF11 were.
And when you became a Jedi, the Empire would hunt you down and put bounties on your head. So you had to have people from your group trying to help you level up.
That is so cool.
It was awesome. So here's the problem. Then a couple years later, they said this is really hard, and they just let anyone be a Jedi from creation.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was a game that was great for so long. It was great for so long.
Wow.
And then it
came out back in 2003. I'm looking at screenshots right now. Wow.
Doesn't it look like a mess?
Yeah.
It looks like hot garbage. But dude,
oh my god,
I'm telling you, this game was so much fun for a time. Like I remember doing the going to fight the Night Sisters, and we're all just like, I'm still like relatively low level and kind of new to endgame, but I'm there with them, and I'm a little bit too close, and one of them just kind of like glances over in my direction. Their like character model like shifted a little towards me, and then like nothing happened. Everyone kind of like took a deep breath, and then she just reached out and started grabbing me by the neck and just force choked me to death.
Oh, nice. So did you ever become a Jedi?
I did not ever become a Jedi. I never even got close.
Star Wars Galaxies was an amazing example of a MMO that made you feel like you were playing in the Star Wars world.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool.
It did not go out of its way to make you feel like the story was revolving around you.
Oh, absolutely.
It made it feel like you were picked up and put into a digital version of what Star Wars is. It's like the least theme parky MMO that I can think of. And that
you played it too, then I assume, Nate?
No, I mean I knew enough about it to know that I couldn't let it consume my life.
And it would.
It was one of those, if I had played it, it would have ruined me. You know what I mean? Like, it was one of those that was so deep and so intricate that I was like, I can't even devote brain capacity to trying to figure this out.
And especially because FF11 was being played by all of us at the time too. Like
that too.
There's no way you could have done both. And indeed, when I was playing Galaxies, I wasn't playing 11. It was one or the other. But what I really enjoyed about Galaxies, and it's much to Anero's point, is it did such a good job of making you feel like you were just part of that world. It's the only game I've ever seen, like, the roleplay rate in that game was so high. And not because people were actively trying to roleplay, you just felt like you were part of that world. You couldn't help yourself so much of the time. It was
like that's a thing. Like, there was like a class called Dancer in the game where you had to like sit and like the dancer would buff you before you went out into the world.
And guess what? Or if you wanted to, you could go dance in the cantina and earn money.
Yeah.
Really? That's so cool that you had so many different options like that.
Dude, if you wanted to be a Beastmaster in that game, you had to go through unbelievable lengths because you could be an animal handler. And the best pet you could get in the game was a Rancor, but you were more yeah, you could get a Rancor. However, you were far more likely to get the what was the fishing rod that was even better than Liu Shang's?
There was a better one?
There was. They added another one in there. I don't remember what it was called, though.
Ibisu. Yeah, the Ibisu fishing rod. You were far more likely to get that and a relic weapon than you were to ever get a Rancor in Galaxies.
Wow.
The drop rates were horrifying. But, and then what's nice about it is eventually they took the Rancor out. And they said, no, you can't. No one can have it anymore. They're extinct.
What about if people already had it?
You have it. Then you're the only one who
So
has it.
they were the only ones that had it. There was just a few people.
Were Rancor Beastmasters more rare than Jedis?
Oh, far more rare.
Wow.
Absolutely. Like Rancor Beastmasters, you had because you needed an entire guild to make one for you. Like you had to have someone who specialized in every different kind of crafting to make all the components to incubate the egg. Like it was insane to get one.
Wow. All right. So, in your opinion, which is a better game, Star Wars Galaxies or FF14?
Until Jedi was made for everybody, Galaxies was, but by the end of Galaxies, 14 is better now than.
Well, I was going to say, if they turned Jedi into something anybody could make at the beginning, it sounds like they pulled a Square Enix before it was a Square Enix.
The original Square Enix.
Right. Anir, I think you're the only one who's played this next one, right?
Oh, he stood up. Bad timing.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, yeah. So this next one, number 7, Elder Scrolls Online.
I mean, I have a friend who's obsessive over this. Like, you remember the Bethesda screaming girl? Yeah, that's my
right.
friend.
Yeah. Okay.
So like, I've heard she's told me a lot about the game, but she's also someone who has been into the lore and game of Elder Scrolls since the beginning, and she absolutely loves it just for the lore. Like more so than any of the gameplay.
That's probably fair, but I also feel like ESO got a lot of a bad rep until just recently when they announced the Morrowind expansion. Isn't that right, Escalia?
I don't even know if it was the Morrowind expansion, but it was like the patches that were leading up to the Morrowind expansion where they improved a lot of things that people didn't like about the game. So ESO is much more popularly viewed now than it was at launch. It's a lot like it's followed a very similar trajectory that FF14 did, where it was lambasted on launch, and they've done a lot of things to fix it. And again, kind of like Galaxies, kind of like SUTOR kind of went the other direction. It started off well liked, and then went in became the Tortanic.
The Tortanic.
I mean, and I really like the idea of the PvP areas that ESO does. Like certain areas are for PvP, but there are still quests within there. So like people can come and kill you while you're trying to, go get an axe for someone. Like, and it's only particular areas, so that way you still have the PvE server while having some PvP areas. I do like that concept also.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't be ignored that Morrowind did help an awful lot because people love Morrowind. Like, I don't know if they had made Skyrim, if that would have been even better. Like, I don't know if that has in the collective conscious, if that's overtaken Morrowind at this point. But I know Morrowind has been beloved by so many that when they announced that as the expansion, people were like, absolutely.
Well, and I honestly, I think that was probably the better way to go as well, because even if Skyrim is more in like the collective consciousness of people, I feel like a lot of people are also sick of hearing.
Yes, everyone. Absolutely.
Yes.
That's absolutely
Yep.
true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think ESO. I would probably guess ESO is more well liked than 14 is right now.
Right now, but again, I don't
because of the hype though. I
especially-
feel like as an overall game, I don't think ESO is better than 14.
Well, plus remember we also talked about 14 being put on this list because of what it accomplished in A Realm Reborn. So if we're comparing, A Realm Reborn, if we're comparing Final Fantasy 14 in that state for making this list compared to ESO, I don't know. I think that I might put 14 above it just based on my limited knowledge.
Okay, that's probably fair.
I still feel like too, like just a lot of people who love ESO are the ones who are longtime fans of Elder Scrolls. It's very difficult, I feel like, for people to really, really love and be invested with their whole being into ESO unless you're already an Elder Scrolls fan. Whereas people can definitely be invested in both Final Fantasy MMOs without having been in a Final Fantasy series already.
That's kind of true because you're right. The Elder Scrolls does directly build off the lore, whereas 14 being part of an anthology series.
Anyone I know, who is obsessed with ESO, not just my one friend, but I have a couple other friends, and they are all longtime Elder Scrolls fans, and it's because you can talk to any NPC and they will allude to things that have happened in the game. So my friend, as obsessive as she is, it took her way longer than you'd expect to get to max level. She's like, because I just love to talk to everyone, look at every rock, because that could be influenced. It could have been there from this storm that happened in this game at this time. And she's so into that it took her so long to get to max level just because of how beautiful and detailed the world was.
That's probably something that I really like about Elder Scrolls Online then, because one of the things that we used to always happen with me with WoW is if they introduce a new PC, new NPC that has existed before but never in World of Warcraft, I'd go to the WoW wiki and start reading lore. And once you're done with one page, you click on something else related to that. And it's kind of the same way that people get lost in YouTube and end up on the weird side. I would do that with WoW lore.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely one of the strengths of that game, and obviously having so many Elder Scrolls in the series would also be a big strength for ESO as well.
And I think to much to Nika's point, I know lots of people who play Final Fantasy 14 and it's the only Final Fantasy they've ever played. I don't know anyone who plays Elder Scrolls Online but has never played Morrowind.
Any other Scrolls ever, yeah.
They all have prior reference for the series.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the thing that was so impressive about Elder Scrolls Online that Square Enix, I think, used to do is that they developed the game so that it did not stray too far from the core of the gameplay of the Elder Scrolls franchise. If you want, you could play that game in first person and it would feel like an Elder Scrolls game.
That is actually it's something I don't think that I realized, but very important, and actually, yes, very commendable too.
And that's the thing is that, their skill trees are pretty similar to what, you experienced in Skyrim. The combat system is very, close to what you've already experienced. And they laid some other MMO elements on top of it, which is very much what it felt like Square Enix did with Final Fantasy XI, where they took core Final Fantasy gameplay elements and then plopped MMO elements on top of it. And I feel like that is a much more of a rarity these days in MMOs that have been developed post-WoW. Because most post-WoW developed MMOs fall into a pattern, they set that pattern, and they stick to it.
Run themselves into the ground.
A lot of the grind heavy Korean MMOs that came out of not Nexon, but fuck.
Oh,
what do they make?
I cannot think.
It's not NCSoft, is it?
NCSoft, thank you.
Oh, okay, cool.
And the games that came out of NCSoft had a very similar pattern to their content, but the fact that they are able to make a bottom line just show, oh, well, I guess that's what we should be doing. If you're an MMO developer, you go with what works. But it seemed like ESO, they had a different path. They wanted to create a fundamentally online version of Elder Scrolls as opposed to here are the core MMO elements. Here are the things that define an MMO as an MMO. Let's put that into our game and then figure out how Elder Scrolls fits on top.
It's actually really cool and kind of makes me want to give it a try.
And I mean,
I think you should. Like, if you're an Elder Scrolls fan, I think that there is something for every Elder Scrolls fan to find in Elder Scrolls Online.
And I mean,
do I think it's a better MMO than FF14? Nah, I don't.
Okay. It looks really ugly.
I mean, well, it
looks fucking hideous. I don't. This is a game that was developed in 2011.
It looks like Morrowind in many ways. But no, actually, and to your point, Aniro, something I was actually talking about with a friend the other day is, unlike so many, like when you think about 14 and how much of, like, they say, it's paying homage to the rest of the Final Fantasy games, but no, you're just lifting things out of all the other Final Fantasy games.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's paying homage anymore.
I wouldn't either. It's just borrowing things out of the other games. And I think he went back, he's like, do we look at 11 through rose-colored glasses? Because when I think of what I saw in 11, so much of it was original. And I had to go back, and I really started, because at first my instinct was, well, no, I'm sure they borrowed a ton of stuff from other games. They really didn't. When I started thinking about it, like, it was a very original space. And so when I see Elder Scrolls Online borrow so much from prior games, but not make it feel like a straight ripoff or just a shameless use of its old material, it makes me feel real good about that. I'm excited to get on eventually and play Morrowind and see what that place looked like 1,000 years before the events of the game. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah, that's fair. Did any of us play number 6? Dark Age.
You want to tell?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know if everyone had it open or not, since it's on the.
No, but you got to tell the listeners, you dumb shit.
Dark Age of Camelot, though, is number 6. Anyone here play that?
Didn't Anira play
Fuck
this?
yeah, I played
Yeah.
Dark Age.
He's talked about this a lot.
All right, well, go ahead. Tell us about Dark Age of Camelot then. Why does it deserve to be on this list?
Dark Age of Camelot was the first game that really solidified player versus environment massive content.
Like raid style stuff?
Yeah. Like where people would really be working together to I would say one of the big PvE elements in FF11 was like besieged, right?
Yeah.
That stuff kind of fundamentally grew out of gameplay elements that were found in Dark Age of Camelot. And that was, I think, when we talk about group aspects of MMOs, a lot of that can be traced back down to Dark Age of Camelot, because they had less. At the time Dark Age of Camelot was made, you had EverQuest, you had Ultima Online, and I think you had a couple other MMOs, but they were among one of the first that were able to get in there. Mythic Entertainment was really, really smart with the way that they developed it. And they had looked at the way that Ultima Online had to separate their worlds into Trammel, and I forget what the other one was, but there was basically a PvP and non-PvP factions of the world. There were versions of the world, and you had to take a telepoint to go between the two different versions of the world, one where you could be killed just in open playing field and another where you couldn't. And they noticed that there were far more characters that were being made on the servers where you had an option to whether or not you could PvP. And so,
because I feel like whenever I hear of Dark Age of Camelot, it's in relation to PvP stuff as well.
I don't know. I know at least at first they did not have a heavy emphasis on PvP. They had the heaviest emphasis on PvE, because Ultima Online was kind of proving the point that you don't want to necessarily be nervous every time you walk outside of a town zone. And so that was their big push for development, and their big push for content was to make players group up together instead of divide them, to be able to conquer content. And they kind of set the standard when it comes to that.
I mean, just based on that description alone, I feel like it should probably be a little bit higher on the list than number 6 then.
I agree. I think
I'm a little scared for where 11's going to end up on this list, since it hasn't. Like, I feel like 11 should have been here at this point.
Shame on you.
You're about to be real mad when 11 does not make the list. I got news for you.
Shame on you, Nika, for thinking that 11 would even make this list.
Really? Because I honestly figured if 14 is only at 10, the fact that how many people have rose-colored glasses for 11, and the fact that when it was around, it was pretty strong.
That's
the fact that
only among Final Fantasy
Yes.
Online players.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't think that
It's not
11
true of
itself.
MMO players.
Yeah, I don't think that.
why
11
wasn't it an
did
honorable
anything.
mention then?
I don't think because 11 didn't. I don't think 11 did anything for the genre. Everything that 11 did was for 11's sake.
It's not anywhere on this
Okay.
list because 11 was treated as a leper in the MMO community.
I mean, the only reason that I might see it go on here is the fact that they're still able to support a subscription model for that game after so long.
It is impressive, and I think there are a lot of things about 11 that, like, if you look at it objectively, can't be denied, but so many people logged into that game for the first time, made a character, got plopped in whatever city they started with no clue of what to do, and said,
Mhm.
I'll
Now,
go
I
play
will
something else.
say that I do think that 11 would probably deserve a place on this list in place of some other ones, like this next one, for example. Number 5, Guild Wars 2. I'm not
Yep.
really sure why Guild Wars 2 is on here at all.
Here's the one thing that Guild Wars 2 did. Guild Wars 2 made Fates.
Yes.
Okay.
That's it. That is 100% it. They basically made Fates, and people were so impressed with them that people played that game for way longer than they should have.
Yeah.
And
I mean, well,
it's fucking Fates.
Yeah, because I mean, I played Guild Wars 2 when it first came out because my thinking behind it was free to play. So okay, I'll plop down the cost and basically whenever I feel like it, I can come back and play this game. It never really hooked me. It never hooked me. Yeah, I feel like the only thing that I did was to me this was Glamour was Endgame before anything else because the only thing I cared about was unlocking all dye colors.
Oh my
That was the only thing that I ever cared about. And even the reason that they give is basically just like, well, you know, it was pretty successful. There was a lot of hype around it. And I mean, it didn't get like super, super crazy, but I mean, people still like it.
Well, I mean, they do point out that they do point out it's a contentious pick, but it is one of the MMOs that sold the most of all time. That said, when you don't have a subscription fee to attach to it, that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's an easy sell, yeah.
Yeah, it's a much easier sell when you promise an ongoing game experience for a one-time cost.
Mm-hmm.
Strife saying Rift made Fates before Guild Wars 2. Fucking Rift isn't on this list. So fuck you.
Who the hell?
Yeah,
is
that's an
Rift?
honorable mention.
Is it in the honorable mentions or no?
Yeah, it was.
Was it?
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
yeah, I don't know. Rift is.
Well, 11 wasn't there either, so
and spoilers. I don't think.
Someone tell me the difference between Rift and Ion because I'm pretty sure they're the same game.
No, Ion had angels and demons, and Rift had a really cool class system where everything could be.
Nobody fucking cares. Nobody cares.
Hey man, I liked the Rift character creation thing. That's it
Never
though.
touched it game. Yeah.
So I like number 4 on this list. EVE Online.
That's fair. That's fair.
I think that's
Yeah.
exactly where it should be.
Yeah,
Yep.
I will say this. I think EVE, much like FF11, took a very certain kind of person to play it, but there is absolutely no denying the amount of player-built lore that game has contributed and that game has pioneered the idea of.
Well, there's no other game right now that's like Eve. I mean, there are a lot I think that aspire to be that, but what Eve did, that's not something that I think you can sit down and say, okay, this is what we want to make. Let's make it. Like the way that Eve happened was so organic. And I don't think if you talk to any of the developers that when this game was being created, that they thought it would become what it is today.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you look at they mentioned Eve as single shard technology, which was not common at the time. So much of the game being designed by what the players do. But when Anira was talking about Dark Age of Camelot and the kind of idea of you having to transition between PvP and PvE zones, like Eve does that so well. You have your high sex zones where you're not allowed to shoot at each other. You straight up can't. Your low sec zones where you can shoot at each other, but the police are going to come destroy you, and then null sec where it's like, no, whatever happens here happens. Deal with it.
Man, I really just want to go have sex right now.
I know, you just kept saying low sex and high sex. I was really confused.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, high security, low security.
Oh, see, I thought Juxta was just thinking about spreadsheets and it got him turned on.
No, as we all know, Ul'dah is the high sec zone.
Yeah, great. No, I don't think anyone's going to really argue with this. I don't quite think that it should trump what's going to be the top 3, but it definitely deserves to be very, very high there.
Mm-hmm. Better than FF14? Yes, I would say yes to that one.
Well, what about? I mean,
Personal taste. No,
I think personal taste. Yeah,
but I think that what Eve has done. Yeah,
Eve is not my kind of game. I don't think I would ever have more fun playing that than this.
Like
But I love hearing the stories about Eve, though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said when I read that recent, the biggest heist ever. It's like it's the best game that I will never play.
I really love that description of Eve.
Yeah, because I mean, if I were to play it, I would just be like a moon farmer. I would just sit there and farm ore off of a moon and probably get picked off by a pirate and then never play again.
Like I can see the appeal of Eve, right? It's to someone who is not me.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's in so many ways it's too real. Like it's too real for my space sim game where I just want to fly my spaceship around and shoot people. This game is literally like, well, no, let's explore the math behind that. No. I'll pass on that. Thanks.
Yeah.
So no, I get there are certain types of people out there who will absolutely love it, and the lore that it creates is absolutely unbelievable and so much fun to hear about. I just don't want to be part of it. I'll watch. I'll see the movie.
Even if you did want to be a part of it, like the amount of time and probably like money you would have to sink to actually get into the upper echelons of like the meta game is I can't even fathom it.
So you know how like games like Dota 2 have been trying to make themselves a little bit more noob friendly, right? Like what if Eve wanted to do that, right? Like if CCP looked at their bottom line and was going, shit, guys, I don't know that we have enough subs to be able to make it another year, right? And they were like, well, we've got to figure out some gameplay elements to be able to make this game more attractive to new people,
more user friendly.
What could they do?
Well, here's the problem: is what could you do that wouldn't make all your main players just quit?
That's exactly
because
that's exactly
it. Right. The people who love that game would detest that.
I think what Eve probably did at some point is they took the opposite path that Square Enix is taking right now with FF14, and they doubled down on their core in veteran players instead of making it more attractive to constantly bringing in new people.
Oh, they absolutely did. They hold an annual conference every year where like you say, their top players are invited to Iceland to have like a week-long like dinners and with the development team and talk about what's going to
backstab each other.
Backstab each other, how influence how the game is going to develop.
There was a smaller version of it though in Vegas the same year as the first Fan Fest in 2014.
Really?
Because I was on a plane with people who were going to an Eve conference in Vegas at the same time, and we were talking about how two really big games at the same time in Vegas. How cool is that? But he was telling me all about the Iceland one and how he really wanted to go to that one. So, but he couldn't, so he was going to settle for the Vegas one.
I had no idea they had
That's true though. That idea that developers actually bring in like the again that like top echelon of player to talk to them about like the game, the meta game, and like changes that. That's so.
Look how much it's benefited them. I mean, Eve and CCP are still a very like profitable company, right?
Yeah.
Like they still make no shortage of money off of Eve Online. And I think, Robbie or Kahlo, you had hit the nail on the head. This is exactly what it looks like when an MMO decides to in an official capacity support their veteran and their long-term player base with both content and decisions that don't necessarily favor them, but works for them, right?
Yeah.
Like if you go out of your way to try to change core elements of your game to appeal to new people, you're absolutely right. You're going to see diminishing returns among the player base that you already have.
Well, in theory,
I think it's smart for Eve, a game like Eve that has already got a limited appeal, to double down on the player base that they've already.
That's very true.
Final Fantasy, and I think Final Fantasy 14 just doesn't think that it has as much limited appeal as Eve does, and I think it does. I think between the amount of competition that's out there in the
I think it's getting there, but I still think that from the outside, what people are seeing is how 14 launched in 2.0, and they're getting interested from that, and that it has less appeal in the long term, I feel like, than for new players.
Well, I think the important part of Nate's argument here, though, is that the reason it has limited appeal is because FF14 isn't the only thing out there of its kind. Every MMO is like, in general, follows that sort of fantasy-ish type thing, right? WoW is a competitor for FF14. Guild Wars 2 is a competitor for FF14.
Because WoW is also a competitor for 11.
But here's the thing, though, is that WoW
that's
was
the point. Who's the Eve competitor?
Right. WoW is not a competitor for Eve. No one who plays Eve, they're never worried about you losing you to WoW. Like
that is true.
Okay, so there's one that I can think of. Dual Universe, not out yet. Not even in pre-alpha, right? Maybe No Man's Sky may have scratched that itch, but the fact that you can't see another fucking player on screen killed that as quickly as possible.
Yep.
So you're right. Like there is no, like if you love Eve and you're like, man, I just can't get enough of this Eve shit. Like there's nowhere else for you to go. You're locked.
Yeah, exactly.
You're fucking stuck there.
You have no other option
until Dual Universe comes out. But if you're dissatisfied with Final Fantasy 14 as an MMO, you have Guild Wars 2, World of Warcraft, fucking Dark Age Camelot, Ultima
Lord of the Rings Online,
literally Elder Scrolls Online. Literally almost every fucking MMO is made in the shadow of World of Warcraft. So they all pick a similar setting, they all pick a similar battle system, and they all pick a similar way to introduce the player to the world. And now we've got 75 different, fucking directed experiences that take us through a well-crafted world that in a single-player game would be perfectly passable. But in terms of a fundamental online experience, there's nothing that if you were a huge fan of something like Dark Age of Camelot or Final Fantasy 11 that scratches that itch anymore. Maybe Ashes of Creation will, maybe.
We're hopeful.
But as it's almost like as an entire industry or genre unto itself, MMOs have decided to move on from a more sandbox environment where Eve embraces it. So they're able to not just collect all of the people who are interested in playing a space themed MMO, but they're also collecting the die-hard MMO, like MMO people and people who, are really helpful in crafting an online community and an online world for your game to exist in.
Yeah, I think the best way I ever heard Eve described to me was when someone asked if I wanted to play it, and they said, "Do you want to play a game that punishes you harder the better you play?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "Not really." He's like, "Well, then you probably should play Eve." Probably not then. Play something else. Because, guess what? The better your ship is, it only means you lose more when it dies.
I don't like that idea.
Unless you have insurance on it.
Well, even if you have insurance on it, though, if you lose the guy who can pilot it, you're going to spend months getting a new pilot trained up who can fly it.
Aww.
Yeah. So you might get insurance and save the money and maybe even be able to buy a new one, but you're still going to be spending a month learning
Wasn't the insurance all player run too?
Sure was.
Yeah, that's crazy. I can't, that would be way too much for me. I can't.
Eve is literally just another world.
Yeah, like Eve is closer to Second Life than Second Life is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 3, this is another one that Aniro's gonna have a lot to say on. Ultima Online.